The man sitting at slot machine number 4471 wasn't gambling. He was waiting for the future to arrive. It was 5:30 p.m. inside Lumiere Place Casino in St. Louis, and everything looked ordinary. Neon lights flickered, cocktail servers weaved between rows of blinking machines, and tourists fed $100 bills into polished metal boxes that promised hope in exchange for probability. But at this machine, something was different. A gray hooded man in his mid-30s sat perfectly still, his right index finger hovering above the spin button, suspended in midair like it was wired to something invisible. 3 seconds passed. 5, 7. He didn't blink. Then his phone vibrated. Not loudly, just once. He tapped the button. The reels spun. They stopped. $847. The machine erupted in flashing lights and synthetic applause. His face didn't change. No smile, no relief, no adrenaline. He printed the ticket, stood up calmly, and walked away as if he had just checked the time. Over the next 90 minutes, 6 different machines would pay out nearly $19,000 in carefully measured wins, never more than $1,199 at a time, never enough to trigger federal ID verification. To everyone else, he looked lucky. To the casino's analytics team, he looked impossible. And in Las Vegas and Missouri, and eventually inside the FBI's cybercrime division. One question began to circulate quietly. What if the house wasn't losing to chance? What if someone had learned how to predict it? Before there was a gray hoodie in Missouri, there was a small, dim apartment in St. Petersburg, overlooking the slow, indifferent current of the Neva River. Alex wasn't a hacker in the cinematic sense. He wasn't loud, reckless, or chasing chaos. He was precise. Educated at one of Russia's top mathematics programs, his professors once described him as extraordinary. But extraordinary doesn't show up on a bank statement. By 2009, he was a freelance programmer fixing back-end databases and patching forgotten security flaws for companies that barely remembered his name. Then Russia banned gambling nationwide, and thousands of slot machines were pushed underground, stripped from glittering casinos, and sold like surplus hardware. One casino operator hired Alex for what seemed like a routine job: modify a Novomatic slot machine programmed to return 90% to players and quietly reduce it to 50%. It was illegal, but legality doesn't weigh much when rent is due. When Alex opened the cabinet and examined the circuitry, he didn't see a machine. He saw a pattern. Slot machines weren't powered by chaos. They ran on PRNGS pseudo-random number generators, deterministic algorithms designed to simulate unpredictability. The reels didn't spin on luck. They spun on math. A starting seed fed into a formula, cycling thousands of times per second, producing outputs that only appeared random to those who didn't understand the sequence beneath them. And in that moment, something shifted inside him. If he could capture enough outputs, enough spins, he could reverse engineer the internal state. He could predict what would happen seconds before the machine itself revealed it. Randomness, the sacred pillar of the casino industry, was an illusion built on decades-old code. The realization wasn't just technical, it was emotional. For the first time in years, Alex didn't feel like a contractor patching someone else's mistakes. He felt ahead of the system. Ahead of billion-dollar corporations running machines powered by textbook algorithms he had mastered in college. He completed the modification job, collected his payment, and went home, but he couldn't stop thinking. He downloaded patent filings, studied academic papers on RNG design, dissected firmware documentation. Nights blurred into early mornings as he mapped out the mathematical skeleton behind flashing lights and synthetic celebration. What the world called luck, Alex now saw as structure, and structure can be broken. The first real test didn't happen in a laboratory or behind encrypted servers. It happened in a dim, smoke-heavy underground casino where nobody asked questions and nobody expected miracles. Alex chose a machine in the corner, not because it looked lucky, but because it was overlooked. He sat down and did something that looked painfully ordinary. He lost. 20 spins, 30 spins, small bets, small defeats. Around him, men leaned forward in desperation, chasing redemption in flashing lights. Alex leaned back, calm, recording the reels with his phone as if documenting failure. To anyone watching, he was just another gambler trying to understand his bad luck. But he wasn't chasing luck. He was collecting data. Every symbol that landed, every near miss, every alignment, was another breadcrumb in a mathematical trail leading back to the machine's internal state. When he left, there was no dramatic exit, no pile of chips, just a quiet walk to his car and the beginning of something irreversible. Back in his apartment, he transferred the footage to his laptop and ran it through the program he had written line by line over sleepless weeks. Frame analysis, sequence extraction, pattern reconstruction. Minutes passed like hours. Then the result appeared on screen. Next, optimal win, 15 minutes, 32 seconds. The prediction didn't feel triumphant. It felt dangerous. He went back the next night. Same machine, same seat. He set a timer on his phone and waited. Around him, players hit spin impulsively, driven by instinct and hope. Alex watched the countdown. 10 seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1. He pressed the button. The reels spun with the same indifferent animation they had the night before. They stopped. Win. Not large enough to cause alarm, but undeniable. He tried again at 18 minutes, 5 seconds. Another win. The room didn't change, but something inside him did. The illusion was gone. He wasn't gambling anymore. He was stepping into the future seconds before it unfolded. And once you've seen behind the curtain, there's no pretending the magic is real again. The breakthrough wasn't the win. It was the realization that one man, no matter how brilliant, could never extract enough from a global industry alone. Alex understood scale the way other people understood risk. A single machine could yield a few $1,000s a night. A single city, maybe tens of thousands a week. But casinos existed in every time zone, under every flag, pulsing 24 hours a day. The vulnerability wasn't local. It was systemic. And systems reward replication. That's when Murat Blay re-entered his life, not as a hacker, not as a mathematician, but as something arguably more valuable, someone who trusted him. They had once shared cheap beer and debugging sessions in college dorm rooms. Blay remembered Alex as the quiet genius, the one who solved problems others didn't even see. When Alex laid out the method, he didn't sell fantasy. He sold precision. Record 20 spins, send the video. Wait for a vibration. Press when instructed. 10% commission. At first, it sounded absurd. Then Bal flew to Poland and made more in 4 hours than he did in a month at his regular job. That was the moment the idea stopped being theoretical. It became operational. Soon, one recruit became 5. 5 became 15. Alex refined the software obsessively. The early version required laptops and parking lot data transfers too visible, too slow. So he rebuilt it from scratch as a custom encrypted iPhone app. Agents no longer needed to leave the casino. They could upload footage from a restroom stall, receive a countdown within 30 seconds, walk back to the machine, hover, and press. To security cameras, they looked like distracted tourists checking messages between spins. Behind the scenes, Alex's server processed streams of video from Poland, Germany, Macau, Singapore, Peru, and eventually the United States. Cryptocurrency wallets swelled with Bitcoin and Ethereum. 4-person teams were clearing up to $250,000 a week. For the first time in his life, Alex wasn't trading hours for currency, he was trading insight for leverage. But scale changes psychology. The more efficient the system became, the less human it looked. Breaks between spins disappeared. Movements grew synchronized. Precision replaced randomness. And precision in an industry built on statistical noise stands out like a flare in the dark. Murat began to sense it before he could articulate it, a subtle shift from partnership to utility. When Alex asked him to recruit 5 more people for a 2% override, Blay hesitated. It wasn't the money, it was the tone. Alex spoke less like a friend and more like an architect managing components. The operation was no longer about proving a theory, it was about domination. And domination leaves fingerprints. The house hadn't noticed yet. But the more perfect the machine became, the closer it moved toward exposure. In chasing efficiency, Alex was building something unstoppable and dangerously visible. Casinos are built on one silent assumption: over time, the math always wins. But math cuts both ways. When the analyst in St. Louis flagged the drop in hold percentage, she wasn't looking for a mastermind. She was looking for statistical drift. Instead, she found precision. 17 machines, 17 wins. Every payout carefully calibrated below $1,200, the federal reporting threshold. No erratic betting patterns, no intoxicated celebration. Just a man whose finger hovered before every spin, waiting, not hoping, waiting. Security pulled days of surveillance footage and watched it frame by frame. The pattern repeated. Same posture, same delay, same mechanical calm. Casinos can tolerate luck. They cannot tolerate synchronization. The footage was escalated. Corporate security looped in compliance. Compliance contacted law enforcement. When the FBI's cybercrime unit reviewed the case, the question shifted from, is this possible, to how many locations is this happening, and rental car records led to a name, Murat Blay, Russian national. Travel history across multiple gaming jurisdictions. The flag was placed quietly. Watch lists updated. They waited. December 2014. Hollywood Casino, Missouri. Blay and 3 associates finished another night's work, blending into the churn of late-night gamblers heading for exits. Outside, the air was cold. A black SUV without plates cut across their rental car's path before the engine could fully start. Doors opened. Tactical vests. FBI. Show me your hands. For a fraction of a second, Blay's instincts collided, run or comply. There was nowhere to run. He reached toward his phone, not to call for help, but because the phone was the system. The phone was the link. A gun barrel appeared at the window. Don't move. His hand froze midair. Within seconds, gloved hands twisted his arms behind his back. Cold steel handcuffs snapped shut. The phone was sealed in an evidence bag, connection severed. Thousands of miles away, in a dark apartment overlooking the Neva River, devices on Alex's server blinked offline one by one. He didn't need a call to understand what had happened. The system had been breached. Blay understood something else in that moment. As he was pushed into the back of a federal vehicle, Alex would not rescue him. Any lawyer, any transfer of funds, any contact would create a trail back to St. Petersburg. Blay wasn't a partner anymore. He was containment. Over the following months, agents were picked up across jurisdictions. Some cooperated, some didn't. Blay refused to identify Alex and was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison before being deported to Russia. The house had fought back. And for the first time since he discovered the illusion behind randomness, Alex faced a variable he could not calculate: loyalty under pressure. If this story were only about money, it would have ended with the arrests. But money was never the real fuel. What Alex wanted was recognition, not from criminals, not from anonymous internet forums, but from the very engineers who built the systems he had outsmarted. In November 2016, he composed an email to Aristocrat Technologies, one of the largest slot machine manufacturers in the world, headquartered in Las Vegas. The subject line was Clinical Critical PRNG Vulnerabilities. Consultation offer. The tone was controlled, almost academic. He explained that he had reverse-engineered their Mark VI platform, that he could predict optimal spin timing with over 90% accuracy, that this was not theoretical, but proven in live casino environments. He attached mathematical proofs, serial numbers of vulnerable machines, documented win totals approaching $500,000. Then, he named his price $30 million. Not as ransom, he would argue later, but as consulting compensation, a fraction of their potential exposure. What he was really asking for was acknowledgement, an admission that he had seen something their internal teams had missed. Weeks passed. When the reply came, it was brief and sterile. Aristocrat declined and had forwarded the matter to appropriate authorities. No invitation to consult, no curiosity, no recognition, just rejection. That dismissal cut deeper than any indictment. So Alex escalated again, not toward violence, but toward visibility. He reached out to a journalist at Wired, encrypted the communication, and sent everything: server logs, footage, the email exchange. When the article was published, it spread quickly. Headlines framed him as a Russian mastermind, a casino hacker genius. For the first time, strangers praised his intellect publicly. The validation he had chased flickered to life across comment sections and message boards. But it came at a cost. Blay, now back in Russia after prison, had once sent him a single message. Was it worth it? The article never answered that question. Neither did Alex. Because beneath the myth forming around his name was a quieter truth: he had proven his brilliance to the world. but he had lost the only person who believed in it before anyone else did. Today, Alex lives in a paradox of his own design. In Russia, he is legally insulated by the absence of an extradition treaty with the United States. Outside of it, he faces the possibility of decades in a federal prison. The world he once moved through invisibly has narrowed to borders he cannot cross. It is not a cell, but it is a cage, a golden one lined with cryptocurrency wallets, encrypted servers, and the quiet glow of 3 monitors in a dark apartment overlooking the Neva River. His methods are now case studies in cybersecurity programs. Casino manufacturers have redesigned their random number generators, tightened firmware protections, and upgraded surveillance analytics because of what he exposed. In that sense, he changed an industry. He proved that random can be reverse engineered, that billion-dollar systems built on complacency can be cracked by a single mind obsessed with structure. But innovation has a shadow. Murat Blay returned to Russia, marked by prison, carrying a record that will follow him longer than any headline about genius. The agents who pressed buttons now carry consequences that Alex does not. Online, he is still a myth, the faceless mastermind who beat the house. Yet myths do not share dinners, repair friendships, or answer late-night messages that ask, was it worth it? In the end, Alex solved the equation of the slot machine. What he never solved was the cost of proving he could. In the end, this story isn't about casinos, algorithms, or even crime. It's about what happens when intelligence outruns integrity. Alex proved that billion-dollar systems built on randomness could be dismantled by patience, discipline, and mathematical clarity. But brilliance without boundaries becomes isolation. In chasing validation, he built a reputation and lost relationships. In exposing weakness, he strengthened an industry, but confined himself to a life he can't fully live. For an American audience, the lesson cuts deeper than gambling skill is power, but character determines where that power leads. In a world obsessed with hacks, shortcuts, and beating the system, ask yourself, if you win the game but lose your freedom, your trust, or your name, did you really win? If this story made you think differently about risk, ambition, or recognition, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe for more deep investigative stories that challenge how we see power, success, and consequence.